Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of Early Access Review, we are going to be taking a look at Lingsha, the latest 5-star abundance unit, likely to be a direct competitor for Gallagher, as well as even some potential other team comps, such as namely follow up with the help of Fu Yuan, right? We are going to be taking a look at her kit, her team comps, Lightcones, Eidolons, etc, etc. So without further ado, let's get into today's content. Okay, first of all, before we continue, this is gonna be a brand new setup from my place in America, so do excuse me with this quick little change over here. And as well as for Lingsha specifically, we were able to take a look at exactly what her kit has to offer, what her Eidolons has to offer as well in the trial event in the Xianzhou Luofu arc, right? So if you guys want to take a look at what her abilities does, just go ahead and take a look at the previous video right here, where we go in depth into what Lingsha has to do, right? So I'll just be going through some key pointers as to how we can utilize her kit to the maximum capacity. So the main gimmick of Lingsha is gonna be how we utilize her healing as well as her damage output with Fu Yuan, which is coming from her talent Miss Dance Manifest, right? Using a skill will increase our action count by 3 and summon Fu Yuan if she's not on the field, and action count accumulates up to 5. And this Fu Yuan, which is the bunny, has 90 initial speed. So to kind of just translate this, Fu Yuan will take 1 action every 111 action value, which means without any action value advance, she can only act once per cycle. So that's gonna be the first thing. Second thing to note is that the base healing for this talent specifically is surprisingly low. If we were to assume that Lingsha is 2500 attack, the base healing is gonna be 12% plus a flat 360, which is 660 worth of healing. Comparing this to Gallagher's Besotted debuff, this actually heals for 707 at a baseline each hit. However, Lingsha does have a trace that can significantly improve this healing amount, and in practice, Fu Yuan will heal the team by roughly 1200 per action. Alright, so TLDR, in terms of raw healing values alone, Fu Yuan definitely offer a much better comfort compared to Gallagher. And then another thing that players might be thinking is the toughness reduction from Fu Yuan. So this will hit all enemies for 10 toughness damage, and one target will receive an additional 10 toughness for a total of 20 on the target, which is basically usually 1 skill. The main advantage that Lingsha has over other healers in terms of survivability is her team-wide cleanse. But this is sometimes random because you can't really control when Fu Yuan acts outside of her ultimate. Since Fu Yuan's action count can only increase via her skill, Fu Yuan will want to use skill basic to ensure that Fu Yuan never runs out of action value count. And in our current break team, this can be a bit of a problem in longer fights without E1 Firefly, and you are going to be running into a bit of a skill point issue. One example that you guys might be thinking of is where Fu Yuan cannot really cleanse our team is going to be, in this case, Kafka's Mind Control Dominate, right? So you guys can see from the clip over here, if Kafka were to cast her Mind Control into our unit, Fu Yuan cannot act fast enough to cleanse our target before the Mind Control target attacks our team. Only after the Mind Control target moves on, then Fu Yuan will go. Alright, so in this kind of some very niche situations, it is not a guaranteed way to cleanse the debuff away from our team. So do take that into consideration, right? Then basic attack, we don't really care about it that much, but that being said, Fu Yuan's basic does generate 30 energy with her trace later on, right? Then for skill, basically is the same toughness reduction as our basic attack, but it now hits all 5 enemies. So the basic and skill, not too much to talk about. And then the ultimate is going to be the next most important thing for Fu Yuan, which is going to be increased 25% break damage as well as 100% actual value advance for Fu Yuan. Since this ultimate can heal both on the cast itself as well as Fu Yuan taking action immediately, it can be used as a sort of like an emergency healing, like how you would do for Gallagher casting his ultimate into another enhanced basic attack, right? The healing on the ultimate cast is basically the exact same as our talent's healing, and this will also action value advance Fu Yuan by 100%. So ideally, you want to use Lingsha's ultimate right after Fu Yuan takes action. A little bit like how you want to use Bronya's skill right after your DPS took a turn, right? So, or at the start of each wave when you need an emergency healing or an emergency cleanse. For the ultimate cost, it's going to be 110, so you are basically guaranteed a 3-turn ultimate every time if you run Lingsha with an energy regeneration rope, which is going to be guaranteed, right? You are not going to be running her with a break effect rope. For a technique, it's going to be summoning Fu Yuan at the start of battle, inflicts B-Fog on all enemies for 2 turns, and this is not an initiate technique, which means you're always going to be using this, unlike a Gallagher. And you will start a battle with 3 action counts on Fu Yuan, right? And jumping to the talent 1, 2, and 3. Talent 1, you will need 200% break effect to max out the full effect of this trace, and it will improve the healing in 2 different ways, not just for the outgoing healing bonus, but also for the attack percentage, since her healing does scale on attack, right? With the current Super Break team, you don't really need to worry about reaching 200% in the stat screen, since Harmony Trailblazer as well as Runmate, they have a ridiculous amount of break effect in addition when they enter into combat. And in the future, if you were to get a replacement of Harmony MC, we shouldn't have too much of an issue reaching 200% break effect anyway. And for our Trace 2, like I mentioned just now, our basic attack additionally generates 10 energy, exactly like Sparkle. So with our energy regeneration rope, we are guaranteed a 3-turn ultimate, which is going to be COs here 5 plus 36 times 3, which is 113. So you're always going to be running ER rope with Lingsha. And then for our final trace, Ember's Echo, at F4 below 60%, Fu Yuan immediately takes action. So it's sort of like an emergency heal plus cleanse. It is essentially an extra turn for Fu Yuan, since it will not push Fu Yuan back in the action order. It will also not consume any of Fu Yuan's action count. So an example for this is if we are using Firefly's unenhanced skill, Fu Yuan will automatically be triggered because Firefly will consume 40% of her HP. So you are going to be at a very, very comfortable position if you run Lingsha with Firefly, right? So that is basically it for a very rough summary for Fu Yuan's kit. A little bit of additional pointers. Like I mentioned, if you want to take a look at something more in-depth, feel free to look at my previous video where we really explored exactly what Fu Yuan's kit has to offer, right? So jumping right into Lightcone, this is going to be the very first thing we see over here. Is going to be Send Alone Stays True. Increase break effect by 60%. When we are using ultimate to attack enemies, increase 10% damage vulnerability to all targets. And when our break effect is 150%, which should always be the case, our damage vulnerability increased to 18%. This is an 18% damage vulnerability to everything. Not just break damage, it is literally everything, which if you are going to be abundance sustained, this Lightcone is honestly very, very good. But you would need a break effect. Not exactly meant for other abundance units per se, but for Lingsha specifically, you can definitely use her beyond just break effect team comps. For example, it's going to be our follow-up team comps because of this 18% damage vulnerability. Alright, so that is going to be that for a signature Lightcone. And honestly, this is a very, very good signature Lightcone that increases her overall damage output for the entire team by a pretty considerable amount. But if you don't want to get a signature Lightcone, all other options are also very valid depending on the situation. So for example, an interesting Lightcone choice that you guys might not have is going to be Luocha's signature Lightcone, because Lingsha, just like Luocha, her healing scales off of attack percentage, and Fu Yuan can trigger the energy restoration pretty well as well, right? So this is probably likely going to be the next best alternative for a signature Lightcone. And then another choice, which is going to be an excellent abundance Lightcone ever since the test of time, is going to be Quid Pro Quo. Right, this is always going to be good, but unfortunately, Fu Yuan cannot trigger Quid Pro Quo. It has to be on Lingsha's turn. And unlike Gallagher, which gains an extra turn, Lingsha doesn't have this for herself, right? So in terms of Quid Pro Quo trigger efficiency, Gallagher is technically better than Lingsha, right? And of course, Fu Yuan and Lingsha's healing is gonna be a little bit lower if you're gonna be running Quid Pro Quo for the offensive setup. What is real is also another interesting abundance Lightcone just for the break effect. You guys want to consider that. And another option is gonna be post-op conversation. Pretty good just for the 16% energy regeneration, since it can advance Fu Yuan by 100% whenever it casts our ultimate. Perfect timing is also a pretty decent abundance Lightcone because Lingsha herself itself doesn't have any form of a crowd control rest, right? Unlike Lingsha, which have a 70% crowd control rest, and Gallagher's E1 gives in 50% effect rest, right? So this might be pretty good if you want to have a more defensive setup, especially against enemy with high amounts of crowd control. That being said though, Fu Yuan can still act normally even if Lingsha is crowd controlled. So in the event that she does crowd control and Fu Yuan can go, it can still cleanse Lingsha herself, right? So it might not be that important. And one last option is going to be Shared Feeling for more teamwork energy and healing, etc, etc. So don't really need to consider. Basically, to sum it up, for Lingsha's Lightcone options, her signature Lightcone 1 can be considered because it is basically the only Lightcone that increases our damage by quite a substantial amount from an offensive standpoint. For utility, in terms of defensive and comfort, there's a lot of different abundance Lightcones that Lingsha can use, and the next best, like, quote-unquote, offensive setup is either Lingsha's signature Lightcone or Quid Pro Quo, right? So that's going to be that for Lingsha's Lightcone options. And jumping into our Relic option, for our main stats is pretty much going to be outgoing healing boost, speed boost, attack percentage sphere, as well as energy regeneration rope, right? So these main stats we don't really have too much to talk about because each of them pretty much serves their purpose exactly, right? That being said, because Lingsha is an attack percentage scaling healer, her survivability can be lesser compared to HP scaling healers such as Bailu or Huo, and as such, she will want to run healing percent bonus as well as attack percentage on the sphere for maximum healing. If you want to give her even more comfort, you could consider running HP percentage just for a little bit of bulk to prevent this kind of like one-shot scenarios in very difficult endgame content such as Divergent Universe, but this is a pretty niche scenario. For the rope, energy regeneration is preferred over break effect because, like I mentioned, the 3-turn ultimate is going to be very important to ensure that Fu Yuan gets as many actions as possible, right? And then for our substats, it's pretty straightforward. Speed subs, break effect, attack percentage, effect rest, they're all pretty good. And then for our Kevin sets, it really doesn't matter that much. For the absolute highest damage possible, you can definitely run our 4-piece Iron Cavalry for the highest super break damage if we are using Lingsha with a Firefly, Rame, Harmony, Trailblazer team comp, right? If you want just a little bit more utility, 4-piece healer set for the extra skill point can be good, considering that Lingsha is not too skill point positive compared to sustains like Lingsha or Gallagher. Or if you don't want to run any of these 4-piece, any 2-piece for break effect, speed, attack percentage, healing bonus, they're all going to be completely fine. Take note that Lingsha's 4-piece Watchmaker will not work because Lingsha's ultimate is going to be an offensive ultimate that targets the enemies. So Lingsha will not trigger 4-piece Watchmaker's effect, right? So do take that into consideration. Then finally, for our planar sets, Forge of Kalpagini Lantern as usual for the absolute highest damage. If you don't have this, then Talia is also going to be pretty good. If you don't want to run any of this, Luxasha is honestly not too bad as well. Because of the attack percentage buff for our slot 1 character, it could either be Firefly, which does benefit from attack percentage, or it could also be Fei Xiao to get a little bit more damage going on, right? The energy regeneration, however, is not that important because we are going to be guaranteed 3-turn ultimate with or without the 5%. Aside from these, you run a Fleetless, you run Broken Kill, Penacony, all this, they're all going to be completely fine as well. Keep in mind that super break damage, they are not factored in with damage percentage, so Penacony probably won't be too good for Lingsha. For our Eidolons in Lingsha, I'm just gonna go through very briefly that. But to summarize everything, Lingsha's Eidolon 1 is ridiculously good because of the 20% defense now. If you add this up with our current Rame setup, with our Firefly, with the 4-piece break, all that kind of stuff, we can essentially hit 80% defense reduction with what we have right now. So in the future, if we get another substitute for Harmony MC, which also has defense down, super break teams will be able to achieve 100% defense down. And another example is if you want to run Lingsha with Fei Xiao, who, if you run her with the signature Lightcone, is going to be a 54% defense reduction. So running this E1 means you will have access to 74% defense reduction for Fei Xiao's ultimate attack. And if you run Fei Xiao with a 4-piece Quantum against a Quantum weak enemy, that's going to be 94% defense reduction. So overall, Lingsha's Eidolon 1 has incredible value, even if you don't consider the weakness break efficiency additional 50%, right? For the E2, essentially just increasing our break effect, not that important, especially if you don't run her with a non-break setup. And then for our E4, it restores HP for the ally with the lowest HP, just for a little bit more comfort. And finally for E6, if Fu Yuan is on the field, reduce all type res by 20%, and when she attacks, additional 4 instant damage equal to 50% of her attack and 5 toughness reduction to a random enemy, prioritizing toughness greater than 0 and 5 weakness. So E6 basically gives her a lot more utility, a lot more team-wide damage output. All type res is always going to be an excellent debuff, right? Generally speaking, in summary, Lingsha's Eidolon 1 is absolutely the best Eidolon 1 that we have seen in this sustain for a very long time. Compared to Luo Cha, compared to Fu Xuan, Aventuring Huo Huo, this Eidolon 1 is very powerful. And between both Eidolon 1 and the Signature Lightcone, me personally, I would go for the Eidolon 1 because it truly transforms Lingsha to an excellent abundant sustain, and it makes her value a lot higher compared to an E6 Gallagher. If you only pull for an E0 Lingsha, it might not be that worth it if you already have invested into E6 Gallagher in terms of a Stellar Jade investment perspective. But if you do get this E1, her value shoots up by a tremendous amount, right? So that's going to be up for your consideration. Whereas for the Signature Lightcone, if you don't get Lingsha Signature Lightcone, there are honestly plenty of options. But if you can get Lingsha Signature Lightcone, the damage vulnerability is also very good, and it is very universal that goes beyond just break team comps. So that's going to be that for Lingsha's Eidolons. Okay, and finally going into our team comps. Currently, Lingsha, you can kind of just run her as a generic sustain for pretty much any team comp you want. AoE cleanse, AoE heal, comfort, pretty decent additional amounts of damage bonus as well, especially if you get her E1. But currently, in my opinion, the two best team comps that can make use of Lingsha to the highest capability is obviously going to be, first of all, Super 8 team, and second of all, it's going to be our follow-up team with Facial, right? So with our E0 Firefly rocking the Lingsha, you can see from the video over here, keep in mind, this is a little bit problematic because for our first half there are 0 weak fire enemies. So while Firefly can implant a fire weakness, the enemies will still have 20% rest to any forms of fire super weak damage, right? Because this is not Silverwolf, so she is slightly underperforming here compared to other endgame stages. In the first wave, you can see that I wasted the damage a little bit, such as using my Firefly ultimate before Harmony Trailblazer and Rame ultimate. That being said, it doesn't really change anything other than optimizing our resources for wave 2. It will still be a 0 cycle for wave 1. I activated Rame's ultimate in the second turn because it will allow us to last throughout the second wave, because I don't really need the turn 1 Rame ultimate, as you can see from the footage over here. With that, I still couldn't really get a 0 cycle, and Kafka will recover from the winner's break, so we will see a potential issue from Lingsha over here. She does not have a crowd control prevention for herself, so you can't really control when Fu Yuan will take an action here. And this is one of the worst cases because Fu Yuan just took an action as well. Luckily for us, Firefly using her skill automatically triggered Lingsha's trace for Fu Yuan to immediately act, and this will allow us to dispel the domination for our team, right? So this is gonna be the overall performance for E0 Firefly with Lingsha. Me personally, I think going forward, especially if we have a 5-week enemy, or if we have like E2 Firefly, all the kind of stuff, E1 Rame, this performance is gonna be diabolically good, right? So that's gonna be up to us. And another team comp that I want to show you guys here is gonna be our Facial follow-up team comp rocking the 0 cycle. Obviously, this is not to say that Lingsha is better for follow-up than Super Break. It is basically just Facial is just super good, and it is to demonstrate that Lingsha can work beyond a Super Break team comp. Although this might not be the best sustain for follow-up team comps, because Aventuring does offer a lot more utility from his follow-up frequency, his crit damage debuff, and all that kind of stuff, right? So right off the bat, before our DPS gets a turn, our HP was reduced below 60%, so Fu Yuan will take an action. But you can see over here, it didn't really even fully heal Robin and Facial because she is missing a lot of break effect from something that we could have gotten if we run her with Harmony Trailblazer and Rame. And yeah, I did not swap her Relics, so she is missing the break effect from 2-piece Calbagini over here. For this specific wave, the enemy didn't really attack that much, so Lingsha is still getting about as much follow-up attack as Aventuring over here. I wasted a bit of Facial stacks waiting for the proof of that to lock onto the target, so do take that into consideration. There is something quite important I want to point out. I saved the ultimate for an emergency cleanse. So Fu Yuan is the one of the cleanse, and I want Fu Yuan to act right after Kafka dominates. But due to how action value advance works, the target that received the most recent action value advance will act first. So if I use Lingsha's ultimate at the start of Kafka's turns, Fu Yuan will advance, but Kafka's dominate will then advance our ally before Fu Yuan. Therefore, you will have to save Lingsha's ultimate right after Kafka uses a dominate, and this does mean that Lingsha must not get dominated herself. And this is honestly quite a bit of challenge because I've mentioned multiple times, she doesn't have any form of like crowd control rest or effect rest by herself. So you do need to get a little bit of RNG gamble over here. Otherwise, you just have to wait for Fu Yuan to act naturally to dispel the dominate. The rest of the stuff, not too much to say over here. It is just standard face out flop team comp, just dealing absurd amount of damage. And I would say that this team definitely benefits more from having Aventurine at the end of the day, because Aventurine launches his attack a lot more frequently, as well as the fact that Aventurine is also basically permanently skill point positive, whereas Lingsha still has to use our skill basic to ensure that Fu Yuan X. Alright, so that is going to be it for our two different team comps that I tested with the creator experience server, and we are going to be coming towards the end of our video over here. So with that, we have come to the end of Lingsha's early access review. This is going to be a much more shorter and concise version because we did go through her kit essentially in the trial version from the event, right? So hopefully, if you guys, like I mentioned, want to see a little bit more of an in-depth look, feel free to check out the previous video. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Alright, excuse the brand new setup, excuse the brand new lighting and the format of the video. I will be back to Singapore really soon, so do take that into, as well as the delay for the video itself, right? So word of the day is going to be Bunny, right? So join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord. All the best for your Lingsha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.